We're here to talk about something that it's hard for me to talk about, and it shouldn't be. I think that people are waiting to talk about it until they know exactly what to say, or they feel like they have all the right answers because they don't want to say something wrong, or they don't want to say something that's conflicting. But I wanted to make this video not because I think I have all the right answers, or because I think my voice needs to be elevated, because I do not think that, but because I stand in agreement that things need to change on a kingdom level. I'm talking about the church, and I'm talking about being the church and representing Jesus's heart in its entirety. Prayer should be our first response. I truly believe that. But I don't think it should be our only response. I think as the church, we should not close ourselves off into our homes and choose not to see what's going on in the world, or choose not to see that there needs to be change because it doesn't affect us directly. We are called to love God, but we're also called to love our neighbor, and so that means that we compassionately, righteously, and responsibly seek his or her well-being. I don't know what it's like to be black. I don't know what it's like to be oppressed in that way, and I don't know what it's like to be speaking so loudly and yet no one hears you. But I do know that through what has happened, not just recently, but with everything that has happened that is just being kind of it's being shown in the light, I guess, people are awakening, and I know that I have awakened in a sense, and I think that the church is, and will be. The point of this video is to encourage my followers and my subscribers to know that I think God is calling us to be the church. We have an opportunity right now, and I think that we have to spread the gospel while the world is looking for an answer. There's a lot of things that I could say in this video, but my church this past Wednesday, they did a talk, and it was life-changing for me. It's exactly what I think the world needs to hear right now. And so more than I want you to sit and listen to me, I want you to watch this video. And I don't want you to just watch the clips at the end of this video that I show. I want you to go and watch the entire video. It's an hour and a half long, but if you're gonna listen to anything at all to educate yourself, to learn, I think there are a lot of things that you can do, but I really encourage you to include this in one of the tools that you use to educate yourself. The voices of the people in this video, the things that they're saying, it has such a kingdom purpose, a kingdom mentality, and that's what needs to happen right now. And I know it will impact you, because I could not take my eyes off of the screen. I could not close my ears to what they were saying, because it made so much sense to me. And so, like I said, I could make an entire video on this topic, and I could address things that are being talked about, and I could spill to you my heart. But if you watch this video, it is my heart. It is exactly what I am feeling right now, because it is what we should. It's the mentality and the emotional response and the physical action that we all should be taking. That's what this video is and what they talk about. So the last thing that I want to say with me talking in this video is that I want to read something to you that I posted on Instagram just this past week. So it's a picture of me and my son, and it says, "I'll raise him to see color. We call Azariah a world changer, and every single day I find out more and more why it is. Not just because of his incredible story into this world, but because his generation has an opportunity. And my generation has a responsibility to not just raise a good human, but to show them change. To show them that it starts with me. Racial reconciliation starts with not just my mind changing, it starts with God getting a part of my heart I didn't know he didn't have. I am not racist, but today and every day I continue to learn more. I realize I have not been a part of the kingdom movement and representing God's heart to a broken world. I will raise Azariah to see color. I will raise Azariah to see beauty and diversity, and yet speak out against and stand up against division. Because the God I want to raise him to know, the God who healed his body and made him walk, is the same God who looks at the black brother or sister and sees beauty, a masterpiece, and desires unity. It's not my responsibility to change hearts. That's Jesus' specialty. But it is my job to raise a human who knows the heart of Jesus is to live differently than the world has been living since sin entered the world, and that includes racism. To not stand idly by and simply live in a bubble because it doesn't affect him, but to live in such a humble way that any injustice in the world pains his heart as much as it does the Lord's. I'll teach him to see color, but I'll continue to listen as the one responsible to raise him. I'll continue to learn, to educate, to allow my heart to be broken and stare in the face things that make my stomach turn. Because when my heart breaks, when the world's heart breaks in this way, we have to remind them that there is a different way, and his name is Waymaker. But I want you to know that although I don't share in your physical pain, my soul alongside you aches for racial reconciliation. So with that being said, I'm going to roll some clips of this video, and I'm just going to roll a few because I want it to show you just how much you need to go watch this. And I will leave the link to this video. It'll be the only link in the description. And I really, really hope that if you took the time to watch this video, that you will also take the time to watch the video that I'm talking about.
Those are really good. I think a lot of this sparked initially because of the backdrop of COVID. People are home. There's nothing to do. I need to get behind something, and maybe this will be it. And so when I first saw the video of George Floyd, I couldn't even believe it was real. Like, this can't possibly be real. Watching, and I was telling my friends who I watch it almost, you're watching Steve Irwin catching an animal. Like, you don't put your knee on the back of someone's neck if you haven't first dehumanized them and you haven't demonized them. You just don't do that for 9 minutes. So there's this sense of this can't be real. Then there's this sense of anger. And if I'm honest, I don't even know if it was righteous anger first. Then I think it moved into righteous anger. And now I think I agree with what everyone's saying. There's an awakening, there's a warning. And I think I would put it in the words of Killer Mike, who said, you're seeing a people trying to decide which master to serve. Which master am I going to serve? And I think what we're seeing is a confliction of kingdoms, of us on earth fighting for a seat at the earthly table for earthly power. And so as I've been in this more, I actually find myself more hopeful that Jesus is making his rightful rule and reign on his throne and calling the church to be the citizens of heaven and say, you must have allegiance to me, not to a political party, not to an ideology, not to a nation, not to a nationality, not to a passport, not to a particular movement, but you must have your allegiance to me as a citizen of heaven. And so what I'm really seeing happening now is, I think, a fullness or a totality of what really is the gospel. Because if the gospel is only Jesus died for your sins so you can go to heaven, well, that doesn't seem to be the kind of gospel that can bring healing or allegiance to an entire people. But the totality of a gospel that says Jesus has entered into earth, he is the rightful ruler and reigner of all things, and calling all people into allegiance to him. And one day every nation, tribe, and tongue will confess that Jesus is Lord, but I'd rather do it today than wait for that day. And so I'm actually hopeful that there is a new generations of Christians rising up and saying, this can't be the gospel that I grew up on, because it doesn't transform my ethic or my moral compass, to use your word. There has to be a transformation of both. My heart is transformed, and now I see the world through the lens of the gospel. And I think what we're seeing is a call from our cities to say, hey, Christians, if you really believe this, then you're going to have to live congruent to what you believe. And so I'm actually hopeful as I see this, that there is a generation of Christians rising up and saying, well, not on our watch. We are going to live out the fullness of the gospel and allegiance to Christ.
And I avoided race talk because I was not concerned with reconciling with white people, because I knew the Lord. I knew my heart, right? And I see a yearning from brothers like Chris and you and a few others that I meet with. They really want to do better. And a lot of people have been taught, your ancestors put us in chains, put us in chains, put us in chains. And so there's a certain guilt. And now there's an opportunity to do something about it. I will rob you as your brother to not have this conversation with you. I'm here to give you guys what you need to be able to move forward. I want us to know before I read this that we are already reconciled. Christ has already claimed victory. It's already done. All we have to do as a church is walk in it. We don't have to create it. It's already finished. Christ has reconciled us not only to each other, but to God. So I want us to know that it's not a goal, but there is conversation that needs to be had. And we have to know, whether you're white, black, wherever your nationality is, you got to understand the Willie Lynch method of controlling slaves.
And so you have to, church, you have to see color in people. You have to see, when I first met Mike and Lillian, I was like, well, Lillian's, she got a little bit of color. She ain't all white. Like, she got something in her. Like, oh, you're half Brazilian. It's like, and there's an immediate, because what minorities do, minorities will find other minorities. Like, oh, what is that? we'll find each other. Like, I'm going to find you. Because there's something about, man, we don't come from the same city, but there's something about, I feel what you feel. And I understand, and so we're always looking for each other. So if you ever come to a place in your life where, and I would, let me humbly stir up the pot if I can for you. And this is what's great about guest preaching, because you stir it up and you just bounce just out of here. Is if you say things like, I don't see color, you haven't experienced the gospel fully. If you say things like, why are we talking about color? Just preach the gospel. You haven't understood the totality or the fullness of the gospel, because you cannot read the New Testament. You cannot read the Old Testament without seeing the thread line of race and ethnicity and culture bleeding into it, and how Jesus never shied away from it. And the entire book of Galatians refers to the reason behind justification is because circumcision doesn't do it for you, and it's Jew and Gentile. And so reading that through the lens of, oh, this book wasn't written by Western thinking philosophers. They were written by Eastern people, weaving through the thread of race and ethnicity and how the gospel ties this all together. So the answer is, yes, the answer is simple, of Jesus. Jesus is the answer. Of course, Jesus is the answer. But that is a deep, deep seed that needs to penetrate your soul.